Hello and welcome to the Upskill podcast. And thank you very much for joining me for this Christmas special deep dive edition where we are going to be talking about the freelance revolution and the gig economy coming up. I hope you're doing well wherever you're tuning in from. 2020 has been a year of great change. So I hope you've had a good year, and at least coming into Christmas, from me to you, Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays. I hope you take this time to reflect and prepare your game plan for 2021 and make it an awesome year next year. So anyway, without further ado, let's get straight in. As you can see, my Christmas tree is ready. The presents are waiting to be opened. I'm shooting on Christmas Eve. Tomorrow's Christmas Day. So this is my deep dive episode for you. And in this episode, I would love to share with you a very interesting person. Her name is Elaine Pofeldt, who is a journalist, content strategist, blogger, and ghostwriter. And she wrote this book 2 years ago called The $1 Million One-Person Business. And it's a very interesting book where she interviewed hundreds of founders of non-employer seven-figure dollar companies. So these were individuals who didn't have any employees. They might have had contractors that they work with to manage and expand their businesses, but they didn't have any employees and did seven-figure income. So really interesting book, lots of interesting stories. So what I'd like to do in this episode, I'm going to share with you her Forbes article, The Coming Boom for Freelancers. I would like to share some advice and insights from this very interesting podcast episode she had about a year ago for freelancers. I would like to share with you Upwork's 4th annual Future Workforce Report, revealing very interesting information that I think we need to know about in terms of the world of work and how it's changed in terms of remote working, how companies are adapting, how freelancers are adapting. And I'd also like to share with you some information on the gig economy, some definitions, statistics, and trends updated for 2020, of course. And if you keep watching all the way to the end, I will be sharing with you some of the best training courses for freelancers. We'll maybe talk about some platforms that you can take advantage of as a freelancer yourself. And finally, I've got 2 free LinkedIn learning courses that I want to share with you free of charge. So if you like this kind of content coming to you, please like, subscribe, hit the bell button, and click all to let YouTube know that you want this kind of content. Otherwise, YouTube is not going to give you this content. So do me a favor, help me out with the YouTube algorithm, like, subscribe, click the bell button, and click all, so then you get these videos when I upload them to YouTube. And remember, you can find the timestamps to every deep dive episode and all interviews that I do on the Upskill podcast right below. The timestamps are there to make your learning more convenient, as well as the links to all the learning resources and the show notes. So without further ado, let's dive straight in. So let's dive into this Forbes article titled The Coming Boom for Freelancers, written by Elaine Pofeldt herself back in June of 2020. Let me share with you some key insights and then we'll move on. So she says freelancers are likely to find themselves in more demand in the future, with 47% of hiring managers more likely to hire independent professionals since the COVID-19 crisis than they were in the future, according to new research by the giant freelance platform Upwork. And I'm sure you've heard of Upwork. They are at the core of the gig economy. They were founded back in 2015, I think, and they're worth around $300 million. And I think in 2020, they're worth considerably more. But yeah, I think the research is very positive for freelancers now. The research is in your favor if you're considering a career as a freelancer. So it might be the best time in human history to become a freelancer. Let's check out what Upwork's chief economist said. His name is Adam Ozimek. He said, businesses really find a lot of value in flexible talent in a variety of situations. This is one of those situations. Companies are having to pivot very quickly and to quickly adapt to remote work and having to change their businesses in a variety of ways. Some of them are trying more flexible talent and finding it works, especially in circumstances when you need to move quickly and grow and scale dynamically. So it's not only a huge opportunity for freelancers, but companies now, because they need to find different ways of scaling their businesses, it might be more difficult to train current staff. So now they're looking at more flexible solutions because for a particular project, for example, they might require this type of worker who can already work remotely and they're comfortable working remotely and that they're happy to join the company's project for X amount of days or weeks or months. So it may not be a solution for all companies at the moment, but definitely for many companies that are, trying to get ahead and trying to make the best of the pandemic and to keep growing, these companies are really trying to work with flexible talent solutions because it just seems like the quickest way to find the talent to get the job done in the most cost-effective way possible. This research, by the way, is research coming out of the States. So Upwork's research was done in the States. The hiring managers were American hiring managers, but this could well be the case in other parts of the world too. And he goes on to say, there are people turning to freelancers now, especially to grow quickly and to scale quickly. They need to figure out how to turn their company remote overnight. It's hard to find a full-time employee to do that. And what does he mean exactly by it's hard to find a full-time employee to do that? Well, the employee may or may not have the skill set required, but more to the point, now the company has to think about becoming remote first. So that employee that they've had for X amount of time, they may not be comfortable working remotely, or they may not want to work remotely. So if a company is wanting to change and embrace remote work, they now have to look at, okay, where is the skilled talent? Where's the talent that I need right now that are ready and prepared to work remotely and they're comfortable to work with me remotely? That is eventually going to save money and save a lot of headache potentially. But it's quite a tricky situation. Let's look at some of the research here. 73% of hiring managers are continuing or increasing their use of independent professionals. That's very positive. 56% of hiring managers said working remotely has exceeded their expectations, and 62% their workforce will be more remote than before COVID-19. Now, at the beginning of COVID-19, when the pandemic broke out, companies had a lot of difficulty getting used to working remotely and using technology in the right ways and helping staff cope with a different way of working. And let me know if that was something that you had to deal with. I'd love to hear how it went for you as an individual. 32% of hiring managers say remote work has increased productivity. So that's another interesting thing, that in the beginning it was difficult getting used to remote work, but eventually as people got the hang of it, it actually increased productivity. And finally, 59% of hiring managers agree that organizations that aren't adopting a flexible workforce are falling behind. So that's just how important it is to really embrace the freelance economy, the freelance revolution for companies right now. And here are two more resources that I'd like to share with you regarding Upwork's annual Future Workforce Report. There's lots of really interesting information here. This is the press release from Upwork's website. There are two quotes here that I'd like to share with you by Hayden Brown, who's the president and CEO of Upwork. He said, companies are just beginning to scratch the surface when it comes to the advantages of having a more remote and dynamic workforce. So I'd love to hear what you think about that. Do you agree with this? Do you agree that we are at the beginning of this huge 10 to 20-year trend coming in? In my mind, I think we are, and we're not going back. He also goes on to say, COVID marks the turning point for how hiring managers holistically think about their workforce and embrace the benefits of having more flexible teams. In lieu of traditional hiring strategies and fully on-site teams, the most effective companies will blend full-time employees and tap into specialized in-demand skills from a flexible and remote workforce. So let me know what you think. Do you think this is going to continue? Do you think these trends are going to continue all over the world in all kinds of companies? Or do you think it's going to be limited just to a few companies? I'd love to hear what you think about that. And the other resource I had for you was the slide deck. That's right here. This is the Upwork Future Report slide deck. There are 39 slides. It was conducted by Clearly Rated. I will leave the link down below in the description box. Now, let's move on to this article on Zeti.com, Gig Economy Statistics. It's a really awesome resource. There's so much information in this article. We cannot possibly cover it all on the deep dive episode, but we will be going over the definition and then we'll be moving on very soon. So let's check out the definition, right? So the gig economy, statistics show a free market system where organizations and independent workers engage in short-term arrangements. So a gig is a kind of a temporary arrangement that you have to, that you're doing for someone. It could be part of a project or a whole project, but it's for a certain period of time and just a short period of time, usually. So it's estimated that 36% of US workers take part in the gig economy, and 33% of companies extensively use gig workers. And I have reason to believe that percentage is only going to increase in the years to come. So the word gig refers to the transient nature of the job itself. And here are some examples of the types of work, So you have freelancers, you've got consultants, independent contractors, and professionals, as well as temporary contract workers. As you probably already know, I'm not telling you something you don't know on this deep dive, the gig economy is not a new phenomenon. It's been around for a very long time, say 10, 15, possibly even 20 years or so. I've worked as a freelancer before. I'm an independent worker. I work for myself, and I wouldn't have it any other way. I'm so glad I made that decision many years ago to work for myself. It's great. I love the ability to choose who I work with and what I do and have that flexibility. It's really great. I don't regret it at all. But what do you think of when you hear somebody say, okay, the gig economy? Well, many people think of, okay, Uber drivers, Lyft drivers, TaskRabbit workers, Airbnb landlords, online marketplace sellers, volunteers, and artists. But the list should also include on-call workers, multiple job holders, contingent and part-time workers, as well as highly skilled contractors, seasonal workers, consultants, and many others. So gig economy participants sometimes treat their gigs as their main source of income and sometimes as a secondary one. So some of them are highly skilled and this mode of work is their choice, and some are unskilled and have no alternative. So there you have it. Check out this article. I will link it down below. Let's move on. Okay, and now changing gears here, I'd like to talk about the podcast that Elaine Pofeldt was featured in. She was featured in the Afford Anything podcast. Here's the main website, as you can see, by Paula Pant. And here is the YouTube version. You can check it out. I'll link both in the description box below. But if you're going to spend this Christmas time, these holiday times, doing any kind of reflective work or thinking about your next plan or strategy or steps into next year, then really, really do yourself a favor and check out this podcast, because the interviewer did a very, very good job at getting out all the key information from Elaine Pofeldt. And Elaine Pofeldt herself, she started as a freelancer about 11 years ago, I think 11 or 12 years ago now. And she really gives all her best advice and experience for freelancers. So if you're interested to listen to this podcast in becoming a freelancer yourself, do listen to it. Some of the good stuff started at 32 minutes into the podcast, where Elaine really talks about the kind of steps you need to do, and first figure out how much money you need to go for. Like, what's your first target? Don't think about earning $1 million in your first year, by no means. break it down. Let's start at $1,000. Let's start at $5,000 a month, or even $10,000 a month. And then what I liked about this podcast is she shared with the listener, asking your network for help. Let your network know that you're in business for yourself, that you're a freelancer. Get the message out there. So marketing is a critical component of becoming a successful freelancer. You need to be good at marketing yourself. And my experience with people moving into this space of working for yourself is that people aren't comfortable with marketing themselves because they've been working in a company for so long. They haven't needed to market their services because there was a marketing department in the company, but it's all siloed, right? So understanding that you're valuable to others, that you can be a resource, that you can be helpful, the skills you have or the skills that you're looking to develop, that you can get yourself out there, only if you put yourself out there. So you do have to put in a lot of effort, and you got to really take the most opportunity out of the small chances that you're given. And I really like that. Start small. Okay, so make sure you start small and do a really great job. She also talks about the 80-20 principle as a freelancer. And I really liked how she talked about the successful freelancers that she's interviewed that were able to reach 7-figure incomes, that they do focus on different things, but every day, these really successful 7-figure earners, they have one priority every single day. They might be focusing on many different things in any given moment, but every day they have a clear thing that they need to get done. Like for me today, it's getting this podcast recorded, which is a huge endeavor. And she also says that the freelancers she's spoken to are extremely strategic. They might seem all over the place, but they're very, very strategic. They have coaches, they're in masterminds, and they're constantly learning how to run their business and how to improve their business. So there's always a sense of change, of learning. They're always learning from people. They're always following people, updating themselves on new information, and they're always about the numbers. They're looking at the financials, and they're also thinking clearly on how much do they need to be happy, balancing the profit. Okay, how much do they need to take home versus how much free time they want to spend and what kind of lifestyle they want to have. So I found it a really interesting podcast. About 45 minutes into the podcast, she gives some advice for solopreneurs. She talks about what gives you meaning. How can you turn your passion into profit? What kind of industry do you want to get into? And what would you like to be talking about with potential customers in the future? What kind of things would you not have a problem to troubleshoot on with customers? So trying to choose something that you wouldn't have an issue on. And definitely the one thing I could really relate to is it takes many failed attempts to find the right business. Like for me, it takes many tries to get it right and to iterate on the right business model. So it takes time, and your industry is always changing as a freelancer, as a solopreneur. So you can never be set in one strategy. You have to be open. You have to constantly be in this self-discovery mode. You've got to be constantly in personal development mode because the market's always changing. The pandemic hit. Now, what do we do? How do we pivot the business? So successful freelancers are always in self-discovery. That's what I do. I'm always discovering new things. That's why I'm always full of energy and enthusiastic about the future, because I see it as a chance to do something different and to learn from the experience. The journey is the learning, which is really exciting to me. So be in self-discovery mode, be open to talent, focus on a niche, and you may not get your niche right the first time, but she said in the podcast, the riches are in the niches, in the niche, right? The Americans say niches. Okay, so think about your purpose. Your why is always so important. Why are you doing this? What's your long-term purpose? Okay, what gets you up in the morning? That kind of stuff. What kind of lifestyle do you want to lead? That's my biggest thing. What kind of lifestyle do you want to have? And how do you go about creating a business around your lifestyle that you're trying to create? And learning to say no was a great part of this podcast. Learn when to say no, and don't do things that you don't enjoy. That's probably my favorite thing that she said in this podcast, that I remind myself every single day that I work for myself, is don't do things that you don't enjoy, and learn to say no. Thank you very much for listening. Just to round up this podcast, I will leave these links below because we're running out of time. 7 best training courses for freelancers. Check it all out. Different courses that you can take, some free courses, some paid courses. There's also the techradar.pro resource here of the best freelance websites in 2020 to check out. Do check out Elaine Pofeldt's book on Amazon, The $1 Million One-Person Business. Do give it a read if you can. And of course, last but not least, the free LinkedIn learning courses that I mentioned, they are down below. There's one course on ideas, 43 ideas for starting a side business. Check the link below. Or if you're a little bit more advanced in your freelance journey, how do you market yourself, your side hustle, your side business, which is so important. So do check it out in the description box. Thank you very much for watching, and do me a huge favor. Please help me with the YouTube algorithm by clicking like, subscribe, click the bell button, and check all. So that way you tell YouTube that you really, really love this content and you find it useful and you find it impactful, and that you want to be notified when I post a new deep dive episode. Thank you so much for tuning in for this special Christmas edition deep dive. I look forward to seeing you with a new deep dive episode in 2021. Have a great time. Have happy holidays to you all. Merry Christmas, and I'll see you in the new year. Bye for now, and as always, upskill. Take care.